Today's January 1st, it's New Year's Day. Time to make your New Year's resolution, which you will follow for 3 weeks and give up on, statistically speaking, if you're like everyone else. And today's quote is entitled, "Compete with Yourself." When you compete with yourself, others will support you. When you compete with others, they will be against you. So I was thinking just the other day, if people ask me, what do you teach? And I say, well, I teach you everything you learned in kindergarten. And why do I need to teach you what you learned in kindergarten? Because through your education, they deprogrammed you from everything you learned in kindergarten. So kindergarten, you learned to share and not compete, but support and be nice and don't get angry and so forth. And then when you go to school, they teach you, you have to be number one. Your parents are pushing you to be number one. You don't want to support others, you want to compete with others. And so I have to teach you everything you already knew when you were 5 years old, because as you got older, our wonderful educational system has completely undermined all you've learned and teach you to be, don't be humble, you'll be taken advantage of and so forth. So, it's not true. When you help other people, it helps you. That's the reality. That's the way the world works. But modern culture, especially corporate culture, is so dysfunctional that oftentimes they will only award you for outdoing others, not for helping others. But in a healthy culture, and in the real world, the way the real world works is if you help other people, then they will help you. Now, people tend to be envious because they don't like other people to be successful. So there's a problem with being successful. And the problem is, if you're successful, some people won't like you, unfortunately. But that's not a reason not to be successful. But if you're competing with yourself, that's the best person to compete with. So if you compete with yourself, try to do a little better, then that's great. You can be successful, and don't worry if other people are not so pleased with your success. It's just the way the world works. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, from one ekadasi to another, you can see how you're advancing, or you could make some sankalpa, some intentions, or what you're going to do. Yeah, so how am I doing? Am I improving? Am I better this year? Now it's January 1st. Am I better in the last year than I was on January 1st, 2017? I would hope so. That's the person you want to compete with. Unfortunately, sometimes we compete with people because we don't like being number two. We're not happy that others are doing well. That's unfortunate. That is a long-time conditioning of wanting to be God, and if someone else is more God-like than I am, we don't like that, because ultimately we came here to take Krishna's position, and anybody else who has a little bit of his position, we don't like that. In one letter, Prabhupada was trying to help the devotees get along, and they weren't getting along. And he said, well, actually, the reason you're not getting along is you all want to be God. A pretty simple, basic, fundamental reason for not getting along. Well, you just want to be God. So, how can more than one God get along together? They can't. So, Krishna consciousness is so interesting because it goes against the grain of material conditioning. We want to be number one. We want to outdo. We're not happy if we're not on top. And Krishna consciousness is the opposite. So if you have a competitive nature, that's fine. Compete against yourself. People will help you. You want to do better, people will help you. You want to do better than them, they may not help you. Now, I was just doing a leadership workshop for people in the yoga community. We were talking about the egoless leader, and the egoless leader is like Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, I would be very happy if one of my disciples becomes a pure devotee and then takes me back to Godhead. Of course, Prabhupada is already liberated, but the point is, he would be happy if one of his disciples becomes a pure devotee, or one of his disciples, so-called, became more advanced than him, although that's kind of impossible. But in his humble mood, he was feeling that. So that's the egoless leader. If the people I'm leading become better than me, then I'm successful. The leader with ego thinks, if I help people become better than me, I lose my job, I lose my status, I lose my position. That's unfortunate. But Krishna consciousness is so opposite of the way things work in the material world that we are supposed to be happy when people outdo us. So that's the idea. So, Happy New Year's, all of you. I hope you do better this year. I hope you compete with yourself, do better this year than you did last year. Make this year the best year ever.